To the Collaborative Mentoring Webinar Series. Today we'll be talking about mentoring immigrant youth, supporting relationships for newcomer youth. My name is December Letexier, and I will be your host for today's webinar, and Jennifer Bourgoin from Mentor will be moderating the question panel. This webinar is part of the Collaborative Webinar Series, which is funded by the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention through the National Mentoring Resource Center and facilitated in partnership with Mentor. These webinars would not be possible without the planning team, which includes the mentoring partnerships shown on this slide. The views expressed in this webinar are those of the panelists, not of OJJDPs or the associated partners. In addition to this webinar series, the NMRC provides resources such as free technical assistance and training for mentoring champions just like you. At the end of this webinar, we'll provide more details about how you can access these additional resources. Before we get started, I'd like to share a few housekeeping details. In a week, you will receive an email with information about how you can download a copy of these slides and view the webinar recording. Or you can access the slides and resources directly by going to the Mentor website. It'll all be uploaded in the next week. To continue to strengthen the series, at the end of today's presentation, you will also receive a brief survey. Please take a few moments to answer the short survey that will pop up as you exit the webinar. Your feedback is incredibly helpful to us as we design and organize future webinars. We want this to be a participatory experience for you, so please use the question box located in the control panel to ask questions throughout the webinar. Jennifer will be queuing up questions to share with the panelists during the Q&A portion. The questions that we share with our panelists are generally ones that broaden or that deepen the conversation. Please keep in mind that we can't really address specific needs of particular programs during our question time. We do try to get to as many questions as we can, but because we're expecting a little over nearly 400 of you on this webinar, it isn't possible to answer all. But first, we'd like to take a moment to learn a little bit about those of you who have joined us today with some quick polls. The first poll we would invite you to respond to is, what is your role in the mentoring field? Are you a practitioner, a researcher, a technical assistance provider, a funder, or other? And if you respond other, we'd ask you to provide a little more detail. So I'll give you a moment to respond to that question. All right, so it looks like we've got about 67% practitioners, which is very common with what we see here on today's webinar, so welcome. We've got 3% researcher, 4% technical assistance, 1% funder, and 24% other. Wow, that's really interesting. I look forward to learning more about that category. So next question for us. Secondly, we'd invite you to ask or to consider, how long has your program been serving immigrant origin youth? Are you just now beginning to explore it? Has it been less than 1 year, more than 2 years, more than 5, or again, other? So I'll give you a moment to respond to that question. Again, how long has your program been serving immigrant origin youth? Excellent. So it looks like we've got about 17% who are just beginning to explore this. So welcome to you. 10% less than 1 year, 20% more than 2 years, 42% more than 5 years. Excellent. And another 11% of other. So it looks like we've got quite a varied participation. So welcome to each of you. Our goal is that each of you, regardless of your time or tenure in this space, that you will walk away from today's conversation with new information, resources, tools, and motivation for this important work. With ongoing travesties in Aleppo and the other conflicts around the world today, today's conversation is of tremendous relevance. Simultaneously, we know that our newcomer youth in the United States are experiencing higher levels of stress, trauma, and violence. So again, today we'll be sharing emerging research and practical learnings for your program, along with insights into common challenges and creative tactics. I would now like to introduce our 2 expert panelists, Dr. Ashmeet Oberoi, National Mentoring Resource Center Research Board Member and Assistant Professor of University of Miami, and Susan Nomi, Director of Programs at Big Brothers Big Sisters of Peel. We will first be joined by Dr. Ashmeet Oberoi. At the University of Miami, Dr. Oberoi is a clinical assistant professor in the Department of Educational and Psychological Studies and is also the Director of Community and Social Change Master's Program. Dr. Oberoi received her PhD in Psychology, Community, and Prevention Research from the University of Illinois, Chicago in 2014. She holds a Bachelor's of Science and Master's of Science degrees from Delhi University in New Delhi, India. Dr. Oberoi identifies as a social justice committed and a community-engaged scholar, and her research focuses broadly on the development and the well-being of marginalized youth in educational settings. Specifically, she is interested and has conducted research on the significance of school context in psychological and academical adjustment of immigrant and refugee youth in high schools. Dr. Oberoi has published her work in a variety of outlets, including the Journal of Prevention and Intervention in the Community and the International Journal of Diversity in Organizations, Communities, and Nations. We will then be joined by Susan Nomi, Director of Programs at Big Brothers Big Sisters of Peel. Susan has over 20 years of experience in the mentoring field in Canada with Big Brothers Big Sisters of Peel, a fast-growing and diverse region just outside of Toronto, Ontario. Susan graduated from McMaster University with a Bachelor of Social Work degree. In her current role with the organization, Susan provides leadership in community partnerships, program development, and evaluation, and has a passion for mentoring research. She and her team have participated in several research projects with Big Brothers Big Sisters of Canada, including the Conversation Club Program Evaluation, the Go Girls Program Evaluation, and the In-School Mentoring Modification Study. However, before we hear from Dr. Oberoi, we have two more polls to inform our discussion. We would like to know, what is your program's greatest barrier to supporting immigrant origin youth most effectively? Is it cultural competency training for staff and volunteers? Is it connecting with family members, recruiting suitable mentors, a partnership with schools served by the youth, or is it a knowledge of research and proven practices? Which of these is your greatest barrier? Okay. So it looks like statistically our greatest barrier is recruiting suitable mentors, followed by connecting with family members, and then it looks like a knowledge of research and proven practices, and then cultural competency training for staff and volunteers, followed by a partnership with schools and served by the youth. This is really helpful as these are core components of today's webinar. And finally, our fourth and final poll. What percentage of students in your program are currently immigrant and refugee youth? If you don't know it precisely, I would encourage you simply to estimate. Is it less than 10%? Is it between 10 to 25, 26 to 50%, 51 to 75, or more than 75? Which of these explain your current listing of immigrant or refugee youth? All right, so it looks like the majority have less than 10% currently, followed by 26 to 50%, and the others. So this is really helpful. And again, we would invite you to consider these individual and collective points as we are progressing through today's webinar. And now I'd like to welcome Dr. Ashmeet Oberoi. Dr. Oberoi, would you set the stage for us as to the foundational elements facing immigrant origin youth today?
Thank you, December. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to begin by thanking all the people who are tuned in for this webinar and the National Mentoring Resource Center for inviting me to share my work with you. I'll begin by defining who are we referring to when we say immigrant and refugee youth. Immigrant origin youth in general are defined as those children and adolescents under age 18 who are either foreign-born or U.S.-born to immigrant parents. Refugees are different from immigrants in that they flee their countries of origin for fear of persecution due to race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. So there are different motivations for the two groups to migrate to begin with. The population of immigrant origin youth is the fastest growing group of American children. Although there are considerations for mentoring immigrant origin youth in general, but in today's webinar, I will focus on issues particular to newcomer youth, or first-generation immigrant and refugee youth, as they're called sometimes in research. That is, those who were born outside of U.S. and then migrated to U.S. at some point. As December mentioned, I am a member of the National Mentoring Resource Center Research Board, and over the last 6 months, I have been doing a pretty in-depth review of the research on mentoring for newcomer youth. And this review is currently under review by OJJDP. So today I will be talking about some general ideas that we can discern from the research I've reviewed, but for details and conclusions that can be drawn based on the research, I request that you read the review itself when it comes out. So coming back to the topic, scholars have articulated that immigration to a new country is not for the faint of heart. The developmental outcomes and integration to the country of resettlement of immigrant and refugee youth has been of increasing concern. Indeed, some of the factors that have been indicated to negatively shape immigrant youth's health and well-being include pre- and post-migration trauma, such as separation from family, living in poverty, discontinuity in education, acculturated stress, including relations with teachers and peers at school, intergenerational conflict with parents, low parental involvement in education, and not to leave out the experiences and perceptions of discrimination, including anti-immigrant sentiments, politics, and policies. Research links acculturated stress to greater likelihood of depressive symptoms, problem behaviors, school outcomes like lower sense of belonging, and academic underachievement among newcomer youth. Refugee youth, in addition, are more likely to experience discontinuity in education and mental health problems such as post-traumatic stress disorder due to exposure to war, long-term persecution, and even loss of family members in the native country. Another group within immigrant and refugee youth that merits special attention are undocumented youth who experience high levels of stress, feelings of anger, and hopelessness due to the often insurmountable barriers imposed by their illegal status. So thus, immigrant and refugee youth, they arrive in the country of resettlement, often having experienced difficult circumstances, and then continue to face new challenges as they navigate a different culture and lifestyle.
So Dr. Oberoi, in light of these realities, how can mentoring relationships and programs help immigrant origin youth and their families?
Well, research has shown that the greatest benefit from participating in mentoring programs appear to accrue to young people who come from backgrounds of environmental risk and disadvantage. So given the just mentioned contextual risks for immigrant refugee youth, based on my review of literature and my work, I think there are 3 primary domains where mentoring can be instrumental in facilitating positive developmental outcomes among this group. The first one is in supporting their process of acculturation. Acculturation refers to the changes in language, behavior, attitudes, and values that take place in immigrants when they enter a new country. Among the various roles that a mentor can play in immigrant and refugee youth's life, especially those who have migrated recently, facilitating acculturation to the resettlement culture, offering opportunities for acquiring the new country's language, if it's English, or even improving language competency, and connecting youth to resources such as public transportation, local library, and other youth programs in the community may be especially critical. And this possibility fits with the idea that mentors may be able to serve as cultural translators for newcomer youth, supporting not just language learning, but also acculturation to the behavioral and the social norms, or the way of doing things in the new country, and thus their overall integration into it. The second domain where I think mentors can be helpful is the adjustment of newcomer youth in new schools. Schools are the primary setting where first-generation immigrant and refugee students are exposed to the resettlement culture. So mentoring can potentially benefit immigrant and refugee youth, given that it may provide opportunities that help to develop a sense of competence when it comes to academic tasks like doing homework, participating in class, as well as provide critical information on how to be successful both academically and socially in an American school, if we take the U.S. context. The potential benefits of mentoring for this group as related to school are also suggested by the possibility that mentoring may be able to play a useful role in developing the types of positive social relations with teachers and peers at school that research suggests can facilitate school engagement and a sense of belonging among immigrant and refugee youth. Now, the third area where mentoring can be helpful is in facilitating parent-child relationships among this group. More often, children acculturate to the resettlement country's language and norms at a faster pace than parents, which has shown to be associated with intergenerational conflict between parents and immigrant youth. Mentors could prove helpful to newcomer youth in navigating the challenges that arise due to these acculturation gaps, thus supporting their overall positive development. But paradoxically, a child's relative faster mastery of the new language also frequently leads to them assuming adult-like responsibilities in their families, such as answering phones, helping parents apply for jobs, paying bills, and translating for parents, for example, at the doctors and even at their own parent-child meeting and parent-teacher meetings. This phenomena has been termed as culture brokering and is associated with higher adolescent reports of family conflict. So theoretically, again, mentoring relationships may serve as a resource to buffer the influence of culture brokering on family conflict. So to summarize, nurturing and supportive relationships may have special implications for immigrant and refugee youth, like in particular newcomer youth who are acculturating to a new country, a new language, and a new educational context. The literature suggests that these youth are in critical need of protective relationships with non-parental adults and older peers who can serve as caring role models, cultural interpreters, and academic guides. Now, these were some, next slide, these were some theoretical possibilities for where mentoring can be helpful in the lives of immigrant and refugee youth. When we look at the empirical research on effectiveness of mentoring for this group, which is, mind you, very, very limited, not just in number but also methodologically in some cases, there are a couple of key takeaways. So far, the available research does suggest that mentoring programs can serve as a useful form of support for newcomer youth, facilitating outcomes in the area of acculturation, both language and behavioral acculturation, social integration, and academic performance. But keeping in mind the methodological limitations of studies, however, this conclusion is highly preliminary. Secondly, the research, which is considered in the review I mentioned before, seems to point to school as a particularly promising context for mentoring first-generation immigrant and refugee youth. Many of the studies highlight that mentors can be effective in helping newcomer youth find success in navigating the complex and challenging reality of going to school in a new country with all the cultural, language, and social barriers that it entails. One related and interesting finding has to do with the role that fellow classmates and peers may be able to play in helping these youth feel welcome and really learn the tricks of the trade of how to be a good student, or in some cases a popular student in an American school. Peer mentors, especially those in a school setting who may see a youth 5 days a week, may be able to help newcomer youth navigate school policies and practices, build a new social network of friends, both in school and outside, help accelerate their language acquisition and understanding of cultural nuances, and also assist the mentee in conveying critical information about school to their parents. So whether it's peers showing them the ropes and helping them make friends, or adults coming into the school or home to emphasize academic success, one potentially promising focus for mentoring programs is to help first-generation immigrant youth, newcomer youth, is to thrive in the classroom and then plan for college.
That's really helpful. So Dr. Oberoi, as our webinar participants are designing or are retooling their mentoring programs, what key factors should they keep in mind?
A lot of things actually, spanning from mentee and mentor characteristics to program settings and practices. I apologize if it feels like I'm shamelessly promoting the review, but we've covered all of these extensively in the review that will soon be released. But I will mention the ones that strikingly stood out in research, and they all fall under the blanket of, carefully considering the nuanced needs and specific cultural backgrounds of the mentees and families you wish to serve. Obviously, it applies to just about any mentoring program, but in the case of immigrant and refugee youth, it may be absolutely critical for building rapport and trust with youth and their families, and to sustain and to keep them engaged in the mentoring relationships. So the first one is to be aware of the challenges faced in the country of origin, challenges faced during the process of migration, like their journeys, and challenges faced in the new country of resettlement, including understanding their reasons and motivations behind immigrating, and which closely ties with issues related to immigration status. For example, undocumented youth and families may experience additional and unique challenges here in the U.S., particularly in light of the recent controversial political pressures around immigration and deportation. So, in fact, the authors of a study on undocumented youth recommend that mentoring programs offer undocumented youth opportunities to discuss their status with mentors or other caring adults that can counter the internalizations of the term illegals, and in a guided facilitation format. In fact, a recommended term in recent literature on immigrant and refugee youth for referring to this group is aspiring Americans. Now, there are reasons to believe that refugee children may be particularly vulnerable to more poor developmental and academic outcomes than children with immigrant parents who are not refugees, given that their parents and possibly the children themselves fled violence and persecution, often arriving in the United States with little to no economic resources, social networks, or understanding of the country's language and culture. So refugees might have experienced an extended break in education and thus arrive with very basic academic skills sometimes and really struggle to catch up in school, especially if they are placed in grades according to their age and not educational competence. Next slide, please. So additionally, some research suggests that pre-mentoring relationship training, relationship building activities, setting clear expectations, mentee involvement in choice of activities, and family engagement may enhance the likely benefits of mentoring for newcomer youth. But however, the implications of these practices have not been directly tested in research. Another consideration is the cultural norms, gender dynamics, and family-related customs of the native culture of the youth being served. For instance, research on mentoring Asian youth seems to suggest that peer mentoring may be more suitable for them than mentoring programs where they are paired with adult strangers, as collective cultural norms discourage, sharing problems with a stranger outside the family. Yet there are other cultures which may have strong cultural norms around gender interactions with the opposite sex, so, restricting who can serve as a mentor to a particular child. So bottom line is that you be sure to understand the norms of the country and the culture of origin of the youth and the families you intend to serve. Programs likely will want to talk directly with parents to explain the nature and role of a mentor and the ways in which the mentor will honor their culture in their work to help ease any tensions around the relationship.
Mm-hmm. So Dr. Oberoi, are there specific attributes, speaking of the mentors, that are proven to be most effective for mentors serving the specific population?
Yes. So first is, of course, to think carefully about who should serve as mentors. There are several considerations that come into play here. but perhaps none may be more critical than whether mentors in your program need to be just bilingual or bicultural as well. So depending on, excuse me, the country of origin of the youth you serve, this may drastically limit who you can recruit to serve as a mentor in the program. Yet, selecting individuals who can speak the language and understand cultural differences may be extremely beneficial. Like they can help develop language competency, function as cultural interpreters, help the youth to establish a bicultural identity, understand parenting norms and patterns of the native culture, and also can help with culture brokering. But these considerations having been noted, it should also be kept in mind that neither the extent to which adult mentors for first-generation immigrant and refugee youth can deliver on these possibilities, nor the types of practices that might make this most likely is clearly available from, is clear from the available research. Another possibility is to target individuals with backgrounds doing international work or volunteer work with cross-cultural exchanges, for example, study abroad students or Peace Corps international volunteers who've served as Peace Corps volunteers in another country and then come back. A third factor is to offer cultural competency training or shadowing, in which the mentor spends time with a trusted member of the mentee's community, learning the culture and settlement issues. But in today's social-political scenario, a critical factor will be the prospective mentors' attitudes about immigration policy and immigrants themselves. So needless to say, the U.S. finds itself in the midst of a contentious debate about individuals and families coming here in search of a better life. It's vital that your mentors do not express views or attitudes about immigrants or immigration policy that may exacerbate feelings of not being welcome or increase the anxiety that many children already feel from the debate or the discourse in the larger media or culture. One thing is to make sure that you are screening out applicants who have political or moral views that would be a barrier to giving immigrant and refugee youth the mentoring they need.
Mm-hmm. So finally, or one more question for you, Dr. Oberoi. What advice would you offer as to building local partnerships and local collaborations?
Well, several strategies for engaging immigrant and refugee youth in mentoring programs have been, including community, family, school partnerships, and in offering mentoring programs at religious sites have been proposed. But unfortunately, again, research is really lacking on the extent to which these strategies are being utilized and serve to increase engagement of this population in mentoring. Secondly, close collaboration between community leaders, schools, and families in mentoring programs and support services for newcomer youth has also been argued to be important for increasing engagement as well as facilitating quality implementation and long-term sustainability. But again, research addressing this possibility is more or less non-existent. And then, although the natural mentoring relationships have been suggested to really help newcomer youth, but the institutional and structural resources that can support the establishment and sustenance of these natural mentoring relationships seem to be primarily missing, as far as the research suggests.
All right, thank you, Dr. Oberoi. We will come back to you as we open up the Q&A session later on in the webinar. As a practitioner who is living out a great amount of what Dr. Oberoi has highlighted, it is now my pleasure to welcome our second panelist to the conversation. Susan Nomi is Director of Programs at Big Brothers Big Sisters of Peel. Susan, would you provide a brief summary of your program and its key factors for impact? And Susan, you might be on mute, so if you want to unmute yourself.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Thank you. What a way to start. I hope everyone is laughing with me. I really want to thank you, Jennifer and December, for inviting me to be a part of this webinar and to share our experience of working with newcomer youth in our Conversation Club program at Big Brothers Big Sisters of Peel. I was really interested in listening to Dr. Oberoi, and I thank you, Dr. Oberoi, for sharing your insights, and I look forward to reading the research when it comes out. I'm happy to share with you a brief summary of our program. As December mentioned, Peel Region is located right beside Metro Toronto, and as such, 80% of the growth in our region comes from immigration. So we're home to significant numbers of South Asian, Caribbean, African, and Filipino families, and we have the third largest Syrian community in Canada. 7 years ago, our organization made a commitment to outreach and serve newcomer youth in our mentoring programs to ensure that we were inclusive and reflecting our community. We developed the Conversation Club program, a site-based group mentoring program where newcomer youth are matched with young adult volunteer mentors. The program reaches newcomer youth ages 12 to 18 who are referred by settlement agencies and schools. Many of the young adult mentors, which are 18 to 24, have either emigrated to Canada themselves or their parents are immigrants. And so they can share their own experiences, and they have a unique understanding that they can share with their mentees. They are role models and sources of encouragement for newcomer youth, especially for their post-secondary goals. We aim for ratios of no more than 4 youth to each mentor to foster relationship development. And the mentors and mentees build their relationships by interacting in group activities during the weekly mentoring sessions that are facilitated by our staff. In some of the clubs, we also have strong youth mentors. And these are young people who have attended the program as newcomers, usually for over a year, sometimes as long as 2 years, and are ready for a leadership role. The youth mentors we have now show great initiative in making presentations to the ESL classes at their schools, welcoming new youth mentees, offering translation assistance, and building supportive relationships with their peers. The newcomer youth and mentors and staff set guidelines for their club that reflect the values of respect and inclusion, healthy relationships, youth voice, boundaries, and confidentiality. Our goal is that the program is informal, supportive, safe, and fun. The Conversation Club program runs for a full school year in 10 locations at schools and settlement agencies. We have summer sessions at the settlement agencies as well. We currently serve over 200 newcomer youth each year, including 40 Syrian newcomers this year, through the generous investment by our federal government, the Ministry of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. Next slide, great. One of the keys to the success of our program was the intentional outreach that we conducted with community groups and settlement organizations before implementing. We wanted to understand the needs of newcomer youth in our community and to explore potential partnerships. Newcomer families were not enrolling their children in our programs, and we knew that we needed trusted partners to be able to connect with them. From our outreach, we learned that newcomer families and some settlement organizations did not know who our organization was or what we did. We were surprised to learn that some thought we were a religious organization. I think it was the Brothers and Sisters name. We learned that the role of a mentor is often provided by an extended family member, and we heard from community members and organizations that non-familial, one-to-one relationships between adults and volunteers, which is what we are well known for, would not be easily accepted by newcomer families, and Dr. Oberoi talked about that as well. We were encouraged to offer a program that would support families' academic goals for their children, which is often the reason families choose to immigrate, and also English language acquisition. This outreach led us to piloting a group mentoring program with our first settlement agency partner at their office location, which was already seen as safe and trusted by newcomer families. I really think that this was key, having that trusted and safe program location. Partnerships with settlement organizations and now with schools continue to be so important for our successful program. Settlement workers are a bridge to newcomer families, promoting our program, recruiting youth, and offering invaluable support to families during their own settlement journey. Partnerships with settlement organizations also open the doors to enhancing our organization's knowledge of the challenges facing newcomer youth and understanding the cultural nuances of specific immigrant populations in our community. As the spirit of collaboration and partnership developed over time, settlement organizations offered professional development opportunities to our staff through access to workshops and webinars. As a mainstream organization outside the settlement sector, this was a true bonus for us. Okay, next slide. I'm sure that many of you have similar program values and goals as the ones that are outlined here, but I wanted to share with you because these program values are really operating day to day in our program. As I previously mentioned, the program values are embedded in each club's guidelines that are created with the newcomer youth and mentors in those first sessions. Big Brothers Big Sisters of Peel staff foster a welcoming, inclusive, and encouraging social climate, building cross-cultural bridges and understanding and fostering respect and inclusion are values that underpin all program discussions. The program values include respect for all and a strength-based approach in view of youth, commitment to inclusion, and respect and appreciation for all cultures and for diversity. And finally, an emphasis on youth engagement and youth voice in all areas, including program planning, leadership of activities, program promotion, and evaluation. Actually, all 10 of our programs are currently pursuing different activities as a result of this youth engagement in the planning. The program goals include practicing English language conversation in a safe and encouraging environment. Activities include small group work and presentations, which may not have been part of the newcomer's previous school experience. Developing these skills and confidence in these skills can lead to greater participation in class and academic success. Another goal is providing social support and encouragement through the mentoring relationships in the group sessions. Over time, the newcomer youth develop a sense of community and belonging through the relationships with their mentors and peers in the program. Another goal, promoting cross-cultural understanding and appreciation that reflects Canada's multiculturalism, sharing celebrations, stories, and games, and building new friendships with peers across cultures. And finally, empowering all the youth in the program as leaders, having youth voice in planning and leading activities, and in group projects where they can make a difference for others.
So Susan, as it relates to the activities or the thematic structure of your program, what have you found to be most effective?
As I've talked a little bit about already, the shared authorship approach is so important to our program. The youth brainstorm together the activities they'd like their club to undertake, often based on their needs and interests. For example, in this month, the activities in the clubs have ranged from vocabulary building games in the programs with Syrian newcomers, to designing a logo for a school conversation club, to a resume writing and mock interview workshop with secondary school program. Each week, the youth are encouraged to share their ideas and thoughts in group discussions, often on a theme or a hot topic chosen by the youth. The American election and the impact on newcomers was a hot topic this fall, as was our own election last year when people of the Muslim faith felt targeted by the former Prime Minister. Through these discussions, the youth share their experiences as newcomers at school and in the community and learn more about youth culture and life in Canada. Youth are encouraged to lead activities and share their knowledge with their peers. Last spring, we had a very quiet newcomer youth who rarely spoke during the sessions. He attended a leadership workshop that we hosted for the program, and a light seemed to go on. And then, surprisingly, he offered in a brainstorming session to lead the youth in his club in learning how to play cricket. He brought equipment in and organized and led all the activities for these 2 sessions in the spring. You can imagine how thrilled our staff was in his participation. The program follows an overall pattern in the first, and I think many youth programs do this. In the first month, there's many getting to know you and icebreaker activities that are planned. Next, we do team building activities that foster relationships. Examples are team games such as Pictionary and Family Feud, which we've adapted to on themes of learning about Canada. Debates and activities where youth choose a point of view and are often fun and engaging with the youth as they work in small groups together. After January, the clubs generally choose a group project where they can learn together, use their skills and talents, and make a difference. Examples that the clubs have done in the past include creating a calendar with cultural celebrations for each month. The birthdays and date of arrival in Canada for all the youth were included. Contributing a story or artwork to a Conversation Club magazine. Planning an event celebration of Chinese New Year, South Asian Month, or Eid. Hosting a recreation activity for youth at our annual picnic, or a sporting event for all the Conversation Club youth. We had a soccer day in August. Hosting a recreational activity, and engaging in a social justice project. We had one of our groups last year in partnership with another organization, did a social media campaign about bullying. The final important program component is field trips, and the youth always ask us for more. The field trips engage the youth in the community with trips to the Science Center or a walking tour of downtown Toronto, and they build their sense of belonging to both our organization and to the larger Conversation Club community. The clubs attend our larger events in our organization, and we generally host at least 2 or 3 other field trips during the year for all the youth in the Conversation Club to attend together.
Great. So I'm going to have a few more questions for Susan, but I wanted just to put out another invitation for folks. If you have questions for our panelists, to consider utilizing the question box. So I just have a few more questions I'm going to pose to Susan. So Susan, it's my understanding that you all have concluded a comprehensive evaluation of your program. What core learnings did you take from that that you think our audience will most appreciate?
Big Brothers Big Sisters of Canada, we're a member agency of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Canada, and they requested a formal evaluation of the Conversation Club program to assess outcomes of the program with a view to expanding this program across other communities in Canada. We were involved in the 3-year evaluation study with Dr. Julia Price and Dr. Michael Kelly of Loyola University of Chicago School of Social Work. In year 1, Big Brothers Big Sisters of Peel Community Conversation Club youth completed pre and post surveys, as well as a comparison group of other students of similar ages and in ESL classes. And also 10 of our Conversation Club youth had interviews post-program. On the basis of the positive results of that first year of the study, the program was expanded to 2 more communities with significant newcomer populations, Ottawa and York Region, which is just outside Toronto. The purpose of the study was to assess Conversation Club's impact on newcomers in regards to their sense of hope and their sense of belonging. Secondly, we were wanting to use the process data to understand how program leaders and participants experienced the new implementation of the program in new cities. And thirdly, we wanted to inform future efforts by interviewing youth from the sites. You can go to the next slide, December. Thank you. So these are the important findings from year 3, when 120 Conversation Club youth were surveyed pre and post, and 18 youth were interviewed at the end of the program. The important quantitative and qualitative findings were that Conversation Club increased newcomers' sense of hope and sense of belonging, that participation in the program increased the newcomers' English communication skills, and that relationships with mentors and program staff were crucial. So on the basis of this evaluation study, Big Brothers Big Sisters of Canada is planning to roll out Conversation Club as a national program across Canada. The next steps include a revision of the program manual, which we hope will begin soon, and of course, seeking funding to expand the program across the country. I wanted to take a moment to bring the voices of our youth into this webinar, and so that they could speak to you about its impact on them. I think that you can hear in these 2 quotes a change in perspective that's taken place, the importance of the peer relationships that we've all been talking about, and their experience of inclusion and belonging. So the first young person says to us, "It was surprising at first because I thought to be friends, we have to have things in common, like big things, religion and culture. But then I realized it doesn't have to be religion, it can be something else, like how you look at people. It doesn't have to be the culture. That's what makes me like have friends now." And then next one. This club is very nice. I really like this. This club is very nice. There is no discrimination. People don't judge you on the basis of your looks or your caste or your background. Like it's just everyone is just has this experience to share how they feel, and they're encouraged to like express themselves. Don't feel left out.
Wow, Susan, those are really powerful statements and truths about your program. So before we open it up for Q&A for our participants, I've got one question for you. So Susan, what best practices and resources have you found as a practitioner to be most helpful?
I think that I've sort of talked a little bit about some of these on this slide already. And of course, many of them we know are best practices in mentoring programs and in programs that are serving adolescents. But these really stand out for us as things that have really been important for us in bringing our program forward over the years. The first is that diversity competence training that everyone has been talking about, and really having that training for all staff in your organization and ensuring that your mentors in this program have training as well. The program will take you on an equity, diversity, and inclusion journey, and your agency's commitment to anti-oppression and inclusion will impact decisions at all levels of the organization. So it's really important that the organization be on this journey. It's important also for your program staff to have training and understanding about the impact of trauma and about working with newcomer youth, and to take advantage of any opportunities for professional development and learning in these areas ongoingly. Our staff, as we're working with newcomer youth, our staff have become aware of potential triggers such as language, loud noises, or voices. And it's important to have strategies that our staff know what to do if newcomer youth experience anxiety during the program, and that we have a plan for follow-up as well. It's really important right from the very beginning to hire the right staff. And as we've worked in partnerships with different organizations, it's really evident who actually has a passion for building connections with youth and really has that strength-based perspective about youth. And that's so important in this program. We want also people that have a commitment to youth engagement and people that have cultural awareness, and languages are also very, very important in the staff in your program. I've mentioned as well the focus on relationship building in the program and how important that is to develop that sense of belonging and that sense of community, the importance of youth engagement as well. Finally, the cultural celebrations and sharing are really important at the pace that the youth are interested in sharing and feel comfortable sharing. Really, these build the cross-cultural bridges and understanding in the program. And it is an important message that we as a community are supporting and recognizing the positive cultural identity of the youth. And then to the resources. Thank you. So these are two Canadian toolkits for mentoring newcomer youth that I thought you might be interested in. The first one is from the Ontario Mentoring Coalition, and the second is from the Alberta Mentoring Partnership. And both of these toolkits have resources to other research that can help you design your program based on the evidence that currently exists. And then as we really have been working this past year with Syrian newcomers in Canada and understanding that community and some of the struggles that the families are coming to our country with, there's a much stronger focus in all areas here on professional development in understanding refugee mental health in Canada. And so I wanted to share with you, these are a few resources that are from the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health, and there are some articles in these resources that pertain to working with youth in schools that I thought might be of interest to your programs. So I'd like to close now with a thank you and to thank everyone for their interest in our program. And I am looking forward to your questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Susan. That was incredibly informative, and I really very appreciate you sharing your learnings and the work that you all are doing. And this time I'd like to turn to Jennifer and invite Jennifer to share some of the questions that we've received so far for our panelists. Jennifer?
Yes, oh my goodness, we're getting so many great questions. So thank you to everyone who's writing those, and thank you so much to our two guest panelists for providing such great information. So the first question is for you, Susan. We're getting a lot of questions about trainings, and I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more on what you focus on during your trainings. You talked about diversity trainings. Could you say a little bit more about what you focus on and what are the core components of those trainings?
So I'm happy to do that. We have a standard training that we do in Big Brothers Big Sisters in Canada called Strong from the Start, and that training really covers most of what would be covered, I think, in mentor training in America, in terms of healthy relationships, in terms of the boundaries of the relationships, duty to report, all those kinds of things. We then additionally take training and provide some training in terms of the barriers that newcomer youth face, and we try to do this in an interactive way in having the potential mentors talk about what they think those challenges would be and expanding on their knowledge. We have a video that we also share that I think highlights, because at this point mentors won't have met the newcomer youth in our program, and so it sort of highlights the experiences of newcomer youth, some of the discrimination that young people face, the loss of confidence, why sometimes newcomer youth can be hesitant to participate and shy, so that it's increasing their understanding of that. I think we also have people share their own experience in the program and have a mentor come and share their experience about how it was best to begin to develop relationships with the young people as well. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but I think those were the major components of our training.
Great, thank you. And Dr. Oberoi, we're getting a lot of positive feedback and excitement about the review. Someone's asking, are there evaluation tools that measure acculturation of newcomer youth or their family members that you recommend? Or just out there in general, I guess?
There are quite a few measures. Some of them are general. The one I've commonly used in my research is Language, Behavioral, and Identity Acculturation Scale, LIB Acculturation Scale by Bierman and Trickett. And what it does is that it measures acculturation in all three domains, like language, behavior, and identity, and it measures acculturation both to their native culture and to the new culture. So the idea is not that, you know, we don't want immigrant and refugee youth to replace their culture of origin with a new culture. So the two acculturation to the two cultures remain, you know, it's parallel and it's independent, and so it measures both. Then there are some scales which are specific to certain groups. For there are a couple of our Mexican children and youth, and yeah.
Thank you. Susan, the next question is for you. Do you have any strategies, or does your program ever reach out to immigrant refugee youth and their families in the wider community? So if a young person couldn't participate in the program because of an age restriction or scheduling, do you ever work with other immigrant or refugee families in the community?
You know, it's interesting that you asked me that, because we have noticed now that newcomer families are beginning to apply to our organization. And so that is a real exciting development here. I think that as our partnership with the settlement organizations and the word about our agency has grown over the years, we are beginning to see many more families coming to us that are brand new to the country and coming to us for our community-based programs and our school-based in-school mentoring programs.
That's great.
I'm not sure if that did that answer the question?
Yeah,
it has had a sort of a spin-off impact in terms of our profile in the community with newcomer families.
That's great. And so when those families come to you, how do you incorporate them into your program, or are there ways that you can involve them if the young people can't be a part of the program?
You know, I think I mean, it's really interesting. We just recently made a match of a brother and sister in our Big Brother and Big Sister program here, and the mother, we've been using sort of other staff to interpret for program caseworkers, and you know, we wanted to make our agency as welcoming experience as possible for her. And we actually gave this family a priority in our matching process. And we were really happy when we were able to match both children at once, because that sometimes doesn't happen. And so this was so exciting. And actually both mentors are from the same cultural background, and both have experiences with immigration themselves. And so this, I really think, I could see they were all in a room together at one point the evening that they were matched, and you could see sort of the support network starting to form around the young people and their mom. And so I think there are some exciting things that experientially are beginning to happen with us. What we're really trying to do is ensure that we're welcoming and that we're reducing any barriers that families would experience coming to us. And so intentionally looking at our processes that way to ensure that we're understood and we don't have unexpected expectations that are getting in the way of families engaging with us.
Thank you so much. It's great to hear. It's really a whole community effort. And Dr. Oberoi, my next question is for you. I'm getting some questions about different types of program models. And I'm wondering, does your review address how different models like group mentoring or one-on-one might affect the mentoring relationship? Does it kind of differentiate into the models?
There is some information because honestly, the number of formal mentoring research on formal mentoring programs was very limited, I believe. But in the review, we do list in detail. There were, I believe, 6 programs, mentoring programs, whose evaluation reports were available. And in the review, we list details of what were the activities and what was the model of mentoring used, whether it was group, one-to-one, combination, what was the mentee to mentor ratio, and what were the program activities that they did, what evaluation methods they used, and what were some results, all in a detailed table that accompanies the review.
Perfect. So that's something for us to look forward to. And this next question is for you as well. Someone is wondering if your research addresses the kind of how mentors should be thinking about speaking in their native language versus speaking in English. Is it recommended that mentors generally speak in English with their mentee if they are of the same language, or should they be trying to speak mostly in English?
I think it depends. It would depend on what is the goal for the relationship. And again, like if the goal is to learn English, then switching between English and the native language might be more helpful. But if it is, but if the goal is to learn more about what the mentee is going through, and if it's a mentee who has immigrated very recently and does not yet have the competence in English or the new language to really express themselves, then at that point to speak exclusively in the mentee's language to really understand and to enable them to express themselves freely without without language being a barrier. In that case, just speaking to the mentee in their native language might be helpful. So it will really depend at the stage of acculturation the mentee is and what is the goal of, let's say, the activity or that relationship at that point.
That makes a lot of sense. And this next question is probably for both of you, but let's start with Susan. What are some best practices around screening mentors regarding their views around immigrants and immigration policy? Do you do any of that screening? How do you do it? And then maybe we can see if Dr. Oberoi has anything to add.
I think that our screening interview is probably fairly similar to ones that mentoring programs in America use. I mean, I think that we're really listening for judgments and listening for inflexibility in opinions, sort of those rigid statements about people or people that they when they faced adversity, what are those situations when they faced adversity? We're really listening for attitudes that are discriminatory, and across our programs, those people would be screened out in our agency. So that I mean, I think that we. I think that I'm not sure that it's specific questions other than listening for the attitudes that we're doing in the screening process. There's a number of scenario questions in our interview, and those often bring up when people are talking and responding about ways they've responded in certain situations. You can sense that rigidity, or you hear their the way they talk about other people, and you understand whether they're going to be someone that's going to be supportive, seeing youth in a strength-based way, and being flexible enough to actually be a part of our program and to go where the youth want to go versus having their own motivations for why they want to do this.
That's great. And Dr. Oberoi, do you have anything to add to that?
No, actually, that was a great response from Susan, and I strongly second all the strategies. I think use of vignettes would be a very nice tool just to present some. And every now and then, there's some incidents that keep happening in the media, so that that the media covers a lot. So just maybe using that as to start a conversation. And then, yeah, to look for red flags in terms of if it's a very rehearsed response, or yeah, if the views are very generic.
Excellent. So Susan, I think this next question is probably for you too. Someone wrote, our program is not specific for immigrant and refugee youth, but we do have a couple mentees who recently immigrated to the United States. How can we support these students to celebrate their culture in our group mentoring program without making them feel uncomfortable or singled out? Do you have any advice for programs who might have a smaller percentage of immigrant refugee youth as mentees?
I think what we, just off the top of my head, what we might do is embed celebrations and recognizing major cultural activities that are happening as part of your program delivery. So, for example, Remembrance Day or Black History Month or whatever. And so actually adding that to the program as part of your themes month to month so that you normalize that in the program delivery. And then looking for opportunities where the youth bring something up themselves that they might want to share. Because I do think that we need to be really sensitive about to whether young people are ready to share stories, ready to share sort of games or activities. And if you can be patient, provide the opportunities and wait for them to bring it up when they're comfortable, and then be able to respond, with enthusiasm and to have everybody on board. I think you make it a much safer place to do that. I think it's hard to force that until they're ready, but trying to look for a way where you can normalize that kind of sharing with other youth so they don't feel centered out, I think would be a place to start.
And that's an excellent advice. And I would just like to add that the program can just have like a list of resources which are existing in the community in terms of like legal aid or mental health or counseling resources that, if needed, and in case the youth bring up some issues, they can then refer to, provide the mentee or their family with the list of those resources.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that kind of bleeds into my next question for you, Dr. Oberoi. So we talked a little bit about the relationship between the mentoring program or the mentor and the mentee's parents or caregiver. Could you talk a little bit more about that relationship and how it might be different for immigrant refugee youth?
I would say in case of immigrant refugee youth, think more broadly in terms of having a relationship with the community rather than just the families which are in the program. And it really goes back to the outreach that Susan talked about that their program did, and extensive outreach and building partnerships with resettlement agencies serving these families and schools serving these children. So think more broadly, and I know it can be a big undertaking, but one of the key to look for and try to find out who are like the leaders in the community, the influential gatekeepers in the community, and to build relationships with them, and then proceed to get their input in terms of how can, like, what are the parenting practices, and then to keeping those in mind, approach the families. And again, it would really vary depending on the country or culture of origin of the families that the mentees are from. But spending time in the community, hanging out, learning about the elders in the community, what the culture is like, what are the parenting norms, is a great way, it's a great resource.
And Susan, do you have anything to add to that answer? Anything that your program does that you'd like to share, or just general thoughts?
Nothing is coming to me right now in December. I think I was so focused on what Dr. Oberoi was saying that I didn't have a thought myself.
That is A-okay. Well, with that, those were all such great questions, and I thank everyone for submitting them. But with that, I think we're going to turn things over to December now to wrap us up for today.
Great. Well, I just, again, want to say what an informative and motivational exchange, and so thank you everyone for participating in that. As we wrap up today's webinar, I want to draw your attention to 3 additional resources, some toolkits, a guide that you'll see here on this slide and will be included in the PowerPoint that we send out, also including, it has some very practical opportunities for you as well. When the NMRC review that comes out that Dr. Oberoi has mentioned, we will email each of you a PDF of that file, and it will be added to the collaborative webinar series website. I also want to just very sincerely thank our expert panelists, Dr. Ashmeet Oberoi and Susan Nomi. your participation along with each of you on this webinar today is greatly appreciated. We would also encourage you to be sure to be aware of your no-cost technical assistance that is available to mentoring programs across the country. Whether you need help with recruitment, planning, or evaluation, you can request free technical assistance through the National Mentoring Resource Center. Wherever you are located in the United States, the NMRC is there to be of support. As a reminder, 1 week after today's webinar, all attendees will receive an email with a link to the Collaborative Mentoring Webinar Series webpage, where we will post the recording slides and additional resources. So also, we're looking for your feedback. Please be sure, if you'll be so kind, at the end of today's webinar, please answer the short survey as it informs our future webinars. Also, be sure to visit the CMWS page on Mentor's website for an archive of all past webinars and information about upcoming webinars. And finally, please join us next month on January 19th for our next webinar on building non-cognitive skills. Thanks to each of you for joining us today, and have a great remainder of your week.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.